So Kay is leading different programs at the retreat. She's leading the track on part one about relationship astrology, and that's always a popular topic because we need all the clarity we can get for our relationships. And it's also something that clients really respond well, and it's an important, and Kay's perspective on relationship is really very deep, psychological and spiritual. And that's part of her book, Soul Pathway, really brings her spiritual perspective in an inspiring way. But Kay is also leading the consulting skills along with Moon this time and part two of the retreat. So thank you, Kay.
Thank you, Maurice. I was sitting here thinking, this is double Aries hell to be at the very end of a panel and then to have the drawing have to happen so that I get to be even further back. And I feel like this is my Capricorn lessons, coming home to roost with all this Capricorn. It's like, be willing to take it slow and build to what it is we're doing in the long run.
And the last shall come first.
Well, I really appreciate all of you who are still here because this is a long presentation, but yes, hasn't it been an amazing presentation? I've been thrilled to see all these different speakers and what they have to offer. And it says a lot about the caliber of the conference that we're going to have at Zion. I'll also mention that I am the keynote speaker at the banquet, and my topic, which is what's happening on Tuesday, disaster or awakening, is really about bringing together the concepts that is the overall theme of the conference, which is how are we using our astrology? How much of it is scientific? What are we doing for research? How much of astrology is spiritual? How do we blend the best of both sides? So I'll be offering you that, as well as the two tracks that I am in the process of leading. So if we can come back to my slides, Maurice. Yeah, I'm speaking today on the lunar eclipse of January 10th. And we can go to the next eclipse. Most of you I know are astrologers, but I always like to touch the basics. What is an eclipse? It is a full moon or a new moon near the lunar nodes. And in the lunar eclipse, the moon is passing through the Earth's shadow. And therefore, the Earth for these moments is blocking the moon's reflected light. So when we have the solar eclipse, like we're having on the 25th, which is related to this one, the solar eclipse is this intensity of energy where the sun and the moon are together. And then they pull apart, and the vibration of the sun, which is very powerful and directed and light, reflects to the moon, which holds our softness, our intuition, our sense of history and memory. And so when the eclipse comes, you can see this photo where we go from light and then slowly moving to full darkness and back up to light again. We have this moment to perceive life and who we are in a very different way. Next slide, please. I feel that the meaning of a lunar eclipse is a lot like a full moon, where we're coming to culmination or completion, and yet we have this added intensity. People talk about or worry about the sudden, stressful, or unexpected events that may happen with a lunar eclipse or also a solar eclipse. It will often seem that something unexpected pops out of nowhere, or something is learned, a secret is exposed, a true agenda comes forward. But overall, I feel that in the long run, these energetic shifts that are triggered by the eclipses indicate that we're shifting toward true goals, we're releasing habit patterns that no longer work for us. And I often speak of them as the change occurs whether we're ready or not. So that the more we can align ourselves with what's actually coming up in future eclipses and see what is being activated and what proactive actions we need to take, the more we can find ourselves ready, and the more we can find that an eclipse signals almost like a magical lock coming into a key. I'm sorry, a key coming into a lock, and that at that point, something powerful that we can recognize as alignment with soul path happens. But if we're not ready, if we're a little bit asleep, then we will be shocked by the events of the eclipses. And remember, these eclipses, something may happen at the time of the eclipse, but also the true energy of it will play itself out over 3 to 6 months, a year, or longer. I usually consider that when we're looking at a lunar eclipse, that the position of the sun suggests the direction to focus on in manifestation, what we're building, where the light is going, where the choices are occurring. And the moon suggests release. I often look to the negative polarity of the moon sign to say what is old, what is outdated, what is shifting. Especially when we're thinking of the lunar eclipse as a completion of a cycle. But of course, it's also, remember, it's the culmination, it's also the accomplishment. But we all know that when we climb a mountain and we get to accomplishment, that pretty much the minute we're there, we say, oh, well, is that all there is? Okay, that's great, but what comes next? What do I need to let go of to come to the next thing? In this particular lunar eclipse, it's a little bit more nuanced how we need to work with it, because we're balancing the polarities, because the sun at this lunar eclipse is at the south node. And I'll also add that we'll get to more is Pluto, Saturn, Jupiter also in that south node sign. So there's also the piece that at the south node, we are also releasing something that is no longer working for us on a human day-to-day habit pattern level. Although the south node also carries the divine spiritual, and only when we let go of that more human ego point of the south node can we evolve. So I would say that we are looking in this particular lunar eclipse at the highest frequencies of Cancer, the highest frequencies of Capricorn, and also releasing the lower, less evolved frequencies of both Cancer and Capricorn. And I'll remind you that in Tibetan Buddhist thought, a lunar eclipse indicates a powerful time where one's thoughts, words, and actions are magnified 1,000 times. So I really like to encourage people to be in some level of consciousness or spiritual practice on the whole day of a lunar eclipse. And as you know, that weekend, 10th, 11th, 12th of January, we have the lunar eclipse on the Friday. We have Uranus moving forward the next day, Saturday. And then the Sunday, we have the exact conjunction of Saturn and Pluto. So I would encourage everybody to consider that whole weekend as an important time to merge and connect with these powerful energies and be consciously imagining that you are working with the highest frequencies and that you're willing to take the shifts that are required for your highest path. Next slide, please. So I can't really talk about the lunar eclipse on January 10th without pondering the entire Capricorn Cancer series that we've been in since July 12th. And you can see that this is the sixth in, I think it's 1, 2, 3, 4. There's one, I guess it's not really showing, the very last one I think is a lunar eclipse around 14 degrees. But there are 8 in this particular series. And so the polarity through the entire time thank you, is about the sign of Cancer and nurturing, healing, uh, nourishment, uh, the divine feminine, and Capricorn has that energy of the government, of course, foundations, what we're building, what the long-term plans are, what we're mastering. And so we've already been working through this energy now for uh, over a year and a half, or almost a year and a half. And so the solar eclipse, which occurs on December 25th, is very significant, connected to this lunar eclipse that we'll experience on January 10th. Next slide, please. You can go back to full screen with that one, I think. Yes. And so the other thing to consider is that the related eclipses, Cancer, Capricorn time periods, have been all of these years. And so you can think about what was going on in your life, 2000 to 2001, 1981 to 83, 62 to 64, 44 to 46, if you're, in that age range. And so when we're imagining what's coming forward in current eclipses, it can be very helpful to go back and look at the past and understand, because we're ever on this evolving spiral. Next slide, please. I also find it valuable to look at the Saros series. So Saros series are primarily about the solar eclipses, and they start at one pole and wind around the Earth. They take thousands of years. So this eclipse, the December 25th solar eclipse, is 3 south, coming from the South Pole, winding through the Earth, and doesn't end until 2400. So this one is still kind of in its middle, and many of them started a long time ago and are coming to an end. So all these different eclipse series are spiraling around the Earth always, and our lunar eclipse relates to the solar. So the chart is cast at the very beginning, the very first eclipse in a series, and you can see here that at that time, the Sun and Moon and Mercury retrograde were conjoined at 17 Leo. Pluto was at the South Node. Uranus, Mars, and Venus, Uranus were connected. And so Bernadette Brady's interpretation of this whole eclipse series is that there can be a sudden ending of associations, of a relationship, possibly with a younger person. There's your Mercury. An emotional component, traumatic transformation, news received, or short journeys undertaken. Next slide, please. What I notice when we actually look at this particular eclipse is that the Mercury is conjoined the eclipse, and Saturn and Pluto are conjoined the eclipse. So there is a connection to the actual initiating Saros series eclipse. And I feel that we have all been working very hard on this energy, the Capricorn energy, especially since Saturn entered Capricorn at the very end of 2017. So mostly we've had the Saturn very close to Capricorn. They've been dancing together in the sky for these last 2 years. So in some ways, that curriculum is already part of our psychic structure. We have all been looking at the exposure of corruption, of governments, of individuals, power issues, who's a teacher, who's not, the horrendous lapses that we have been, as humans, we have done in terms of the taking care of our planet. And so on an individual and global level, reality has been starkly in our face more and more over these last couple of years. And even though there's a triggering point at an eclipse or a triggering point when Saturn Pluto conjoin, my sense always with these major events is that the curriculum and the energy and all the work we have to do is already happening, and we are already faced with the hard choices and the knowledge that we must take action. And of course, Jupiter coming into Capricorn, a big theme of our panel today, Jupiter in Capricorn is, in fact, as other speakers said, having a lot to do now with a shift where beliefs, philosophy, the higher frequency of how we perceive we're moving forward in life now has to become very grounded. We have to take steps, practical, logical, maybe painful steps toward our goal. And our goal literally here is going to be survival. And on one level, I feel we can become quite hopeless about what's going on. You know, Jupiter often represents hopefulness or hopelessness. And in Sagittarius, we could still pull the rabbit out of the hat and tell ourselves it's all going to be okay. But as Jupiter's coming into Capricorn, we can't really tell ourselves that anymore. You know, the reality is very much in front of us. And whatever it is we need to do as individuals, our little piece of the puzzle may be what is directly personally in front of us to work with these eclipses. But also there is this larger theme of how do we transform and change the laws, the government structures, the way corporations work, you know, very, very large projects to do. But with the level of reality that we now feel with this huge stellium of South Node Pluto, and then all the planets in Capricorn engaged in this eclipse, I feel like that whole weekend says this is the turning point. You may spend the weekend doing whatever you do. Maybe you won't notice so much, but 10 years from now, when you look back, you'll see that this was a huge turning point for our planet. So when we're balancing at Capricorn and Cancer, there has been needed more than ever self-care, the energy of Cancer to care for oneself, healing lovingly, compassionately, to care for one's family, one's circle, and also to be caring for the earth. And I feel we have a little bit of a blessing in this chart where we see there's a trine to Neptune and a sextile from the Neptune back to the Capricorn planets. So our spiritual path, our sense of care and compassion for each other and for the world is an essential part of this particular culmination and turning point. Next slide, please. So I've pretty much mentioned here about the Pluto-Saturn plus effect. By plus, I mean that the Mercury is also in alignment. Power shifts, the continued exposure of corruption, hopefully the continued evolution of new paradigms. I think sometimes we forget that when we get so lost in the dark predictions of Capricorn and all of this foundational crumbling, is that at the same time there's amazing new paradigms that are building, and we have to allow the old, which is so corrupt and so dead, we have to allow it to fall without so much fear, and pay attention and support all of the new ways of being, new schools, new government ideas, new ways of farming, building communities. This is essential that we keep our attention focused on, you know, what new is arriving and coming into this balance of the best energies of Cancer and Capricorn, which includes youth and maturity, our inner mother-father archetype, and the balance of healing and boundaries. Next slide, please. For your own personal approach, look at where does the lunar eclipse fall in your chart. Obviously, it's in 2 opposing houses. Look at planets and angles that are 17 to 23 degrees of cardinal signs. Might also look at your natal moon placement and the house with Cancer on the cusp. This will indicate some of the long-term effects of this eclipse. Stay connected to your own personal Capricorn vision of mastery, accomplishment, and goals. Release where you find you're in struggle and rigidity and discouragement. And you'll do that through the Cancerian balance, finding healing, self-care, and nourishment. And that includes that release of emotional immaturity. We've all got a little inner child in us somewhere who needs to be taken care of so that we can find the balance between Cancer and Capricorn. In a full moon ceremony, it's great to write down what you're letting go of on a piece of paper, burn it, and let yourself be connected to that joy of completion and the sense that the next mountaintop is in front of you. And thank you so much. I'm honored to be the Director of Education for OPA and to be with you at the conference in Zion.
Thank you so much, Kay. Wonderful insights. And just a quick note, everyone, we will also have a panel on the whole year 2020. It's called OPA Live, and that will take place on December 21st. You'll receive announcements about it. One last word about Jupiter in Capricorn. First of all, thanks to all the amazing presentations here. I think everyone really, in their own short time, gave very pertinent and useful information that is complementing. I want to also, have a prayer for this year to come. It is a dramatic year, and we need to stay in a very Capricornian way, as everything happens in the sign of Capricorn, to stay aligned with higher intention, higher purpose, and visualize enlightened leadership at the top of the mountain. People we can really rely on. It doesn't matter what political affiliation you have. What's important is that those who are assigned to lead do so with integrity, do so with true concern for the people, for the land, and for the whole holistic ecosystem that includes human beings. And thank you, everyone at OPA, for that process. One note about those of you who do some ceremony and who do your meditation, the sign of Capricorn and Jupiter in Capricorn in particular has to do with also bringing in your ancestors, the living ancestors and the departed ancestors. This is something that's very strong in indigenous cultures, to bring the elders, to connect with our lineage. And it's something very, that's lost in modern culture. And I think in this time of precarious changes and going into the unknown and so many transformative, powerful transit, we need ourselves to stay strong, aligned, and we need to cooperate with our colleagues, get over our egos, choose our battles carefully, but also bring the support of the elders. So thank you very much. And I hope you feel inspired to join the retreat. It's our labor of love. It is a time to bring people together in flesh, not only through screens and online. We put everything into it, and it is going to be a fabulous program. So imagine now, after 2.5 hours, going out in the mountains and breathing the promised land of Zion. Aloha, aho. Thank you, everyone.